I never thought my own father would ban me from his birthday party, but there I was, standing outside his house on a cold October evening, watching through the window as my entire family celebrated without me. The warm glow from inside felt like a mockery, and I could see my siblings laughing, my cousins raising their glasses, and my dad opening presents with that big smile he always wore when he was truly happy. That smile used to include me. It all started 3 months earlier when I made what I thought was a reasonable decision about my career. I had been working at my dad's construction company for 5 years, right out of college, doing everything from paperwork to actual building work. Dad always said the business would be mine someday, that it was our family legacy. But I had dreams of my own. When TechFlow offered me a position as a software developer with twice my current salary and opportunities to travel, I knew I had to take it. The conversation didn't go well. Dad sat behind his desk in the trailer office, his weathered hands gripping a coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter. When I told him about the offer, his face went through several emotions before settling on something I'd never seen before: disappointment, mixed with what felt like betrayal. He said I was abandoning the family, throwing away everything he'd built for us, choosing strangers over blood. I tried to explain that it wasn't about choosing sides, that I could still help the business grow in other ways, maybe even bring technology solutions that could modernize operations. But Dad saw it differently. In his mind, I was just another young person who thought they were too good for honest work, too smart for family values. The argument escalated quickly, with both of us saying things we probably didn't mean. He accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. I accused him of being controlling and stuck in the past. The final blow came when he said that if I was so eager to leave the family behind, maybe I should stay gone. I walked out that day and we barely spoke for the next 3 months. Crow. My mom tried to mediate, of course. She'd call me every few days, updating me on Dad's health, sharing little stories about work, always ending with some variation of, "You know he misses you," or, "He's just hurt, honey." My siblings were caught in the middle, and I could tell family gatherings were tense without me there. But Dad remained stubborn, and honestly, so did I. Pride is a powerful thing, and we both had plenty of it. Then came the birthday invitation, or rather, the lack of one. Every year, for as long as I could remember, Dad's birthday was a huge family affair. Mom would spend weeks planning, ordering his favorite foods, coordinating with relatives, and making sure everyone knew what to bring. This year, when I called to ask about the plans, Mom's voice got quiet and uncomfortable. She explained that Dad had specifically said he didn't want me there, that my presence would ruin his day and make things awkward for everyone else. The rejection hit harder than I expected. I'd imagined we might use his birthday as a chance to reconcile, maybe have a real conversation away from the heat of our original argument. Instead, I was being actively excluded from a tradition that had been part of my life for 26 years. That night, I sat in my apartment, scrolling through old family photos on my phone, seeing image after image of previous birthday celebrations where I was right there next to him, both of us smiling. That's when the idea came to me. If Dad wanted to play hardball, if he wanted to make a point about family loyalty and consequences, then maybe it was time for him to learn about consequences himself. I knew exactly what he wanted for his birthday, because Mom had mentioned it during one of our calls. He'd been dropping hints for months about a few specific items: a new power drill set he'd been eyeing at the hardware store, a vintage baseball cap from his favorite team's championship year, and a first edition copy of a Western novel by his favorite author. I spent the next week tracking down every single item on his unofficial wish list. The drill set was easy enough to find at 3 different stores across town. The baseball cap took some detective work, but I found it at a specialty sports memorabilia shop downtown. The book was the hardest to locate, but after calling dozens of bookstores and checking online auctions, I finally found a pristine first edition at a collector's shop 2 cities over. But I didn't stop there. I remembered conversations from family dinners where he'd mentioned other things he wanted. A specific brand of work boots he'd seen advertised, a leather wallet to replace his worn-out one, even a particular type of coffee he'd tried once and loved, but could never find again. By the time I was done shopping, I had 12 different items that I knew would make him genuinely happy. The total came to just over $800, which was more than I'd ever spent on a single birthday gift, but money wasn't really the point. I carefully wrapped each item, taking time to make them look perfect, just the way Mom always did for family gifts. I even bought a stack of birthday cards and wrote heartfelt messages in each one, sharing specific memories we'd made together and expressing how much he meant to me despite our current situation. On the morning of his birthday, I loaded everything into my car and drove to his house early, before any of the other family members arrived. I could see him through the kitchen window, drinking his morning coffee and reading the newspaper like he did every day. For a moment, I almost knocked on the door, almost tried to talk to him face to face. But I remembered his words about not wanting me there, and I stuck to my plan. I arranged all the beautifully wrapped gifts on his front porch, along with a simple note that read, "Happy birthday, Dad. I hope your day is everything you wanted." Then I drove to the shopping center across from his neighborhood and waited. I wanted to see his reaction when he found them, to know that despite everything, I had managed to show him how much I cared. About an hour later, I watched him open the front door to bring in his newspaper. I was too far away to see his expression clearly, but I could tell he was surprised. He looked around the neighborhood, probably wondering who had left the gifts. Then he started bringing them inside, one by one, and I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing that each package contained exactly what he wanted. But my satisfaction was short-lived. Around noon, just as the party was supposed to be starting, I drove back to return the receipts I'd forgotten in my glove compartment. I wanted to make sure he had them in case anything needed to be exchanged. That's when I saw him loading all the unopened gifts into the back of his truck. My heart sank as I watched him drive away. I followed at a distance, telling myself I just wanted to make sure he was okay, but really I needed to know what he was doing with the presents. He drove straight to the Goodwill donation center. I sat in my car, watching in disbelief as my father carried each carefully wrapped gift to the donation bin and dropped them in without even opening them. The message was clear and brutal. He didn't just not want my presents at his birthday. He didn't want anything from me at all. Every dollar I'd spent, every hour I'd invested in finding the perfect gifts, every hopeful thought I'd had about reconciliation, all of it was being tossed away like garbage. I felt humiliated and angry, but underneath those emotions was a deeper hurt that cut straight to my core. I sat there for 20 minutes after he left, staring at the donation bin that now contained the physical representation of my love for him. Then I got out of my car, walked up to the bin, and started pulling everything back out. The Goodwill worker who came outside looked at me like I was crazy. And maybe I was, but I explained the situation and asked if I could have my donations back. She was surprisingly understanding and helped me load everything back into my car. The drive home was when the real plan crystallized in my mind. Dad had made his statement. Now it was time for mine. If he didn't want gifts from me, then fine. But he'd also just cost himself everything he actually wanted for his birthday, because I was going to return every single item and get my money back. I spent the rest of his birthday driving from store to store, returning each purchase with the receipts I'd so thoughtfully kept. The drill set went back to the hardware store. The baseball cap went back to the memorabilia shop. The first edition book went back to the collector, who was actually happy to have it again, since he'd had several other customers asking about it. One by one, I undid every purchase, erasing every gift I'd so carefully selected. By evening, I had a wallet full of cash and gift receipts, and Dad had a birthday with no presents from his eldest son. But the story doesn't end with petty revenge, because life is more complicated than that. The next morning, my mom called, and she sounded tired in a way that had nothing to do with staying up late for a party. She told me that the birthday celebration had been subdued, that Dad seemed distracted and kept looking toward the door as if he was expecting someone to show up. She also mentioned that he'd spent a lot of time in his garage after everyone left, which was what he always did when he was working through difficult emotions. Then she said something that changed everything. She told me that after I'd left for my new job, Dad had started each day by driving past the TechFlow building on his way to work. She'd seen the route change on their shared GPS app and finally confronted him about it. He admitted that he was curious about where I worked, what my new life looked like, whether I seemed happy. He'd been too proud to ask me directly, but he'd been thinking about me every single day. She also revealed that Dad had kept every text message I'd sent him over the past 3 months, even though he'd never responded to any of them. He'd read them all multiple times, apparently, and had even started typing responses before deleting them. He wanted to reach out, she said, but he didn't know how to bridge the gap that had grown between us. Hearing this, I realized that my gift gesture, despite being rejected, had probably affected him more than I knew. And my subsequent decision to return everything was just another layer of hurt in an already complicated situation. We were both being stubborn, both waiting for the other person to make the first move, both too proud to admit that we missed each other. That evening, I made a decision that surprised even me. I took the $800 I'd gotten from returning all the gifts and bought a single item, a simple picture frame. Inside, I placed a photo from the previous year's birthday party, one where Dad and I were both laughing at something my youngest cousin had said. We looked genuinely happy together, like the father and son we'd always been before career ambitions and family expectations got in the way. I drove to his house after dark, when I knew he'd be in the garage. I could see the light on and hear the sound of him working on some project, probably building something with his hands the way he always did when he needed to think. I left the framed photo on his workbench where he'd be sure to find it, along with a new note. This one was longer and more honest than the first. I wrote about how much I missed our conversations, how proud I was to be his son, and how sorry I was that we'd let our disagreement grow into something so big and painful. I acknowledged that I'd handled things poorly, that I should have involved him more in my decision-making process and been more understanding of his perspective. But I also stood by my choice to pursue my own path, explaining that it didn't mean I loved him or our family any less. Most importantly, I told him about the gifts, how I'd spent days finding exactly what he wanted, how it had hurt to see him throw them away without opening them, and how I'd returned everything in a moment of anger and pride. I admitted that we were both being stubborn, both contributing to a situation that was making the whole family unhappy. I ended by saying that I'd be at the coffee shop where we used to have breakfast every Saturday morning, and that I'd wait there every Saturday until he was ready to talk. The first Saturday, he didn't show up, neither did the second or third. But on the fourth Saturday, as I sat reading the newspaper and drinking coffee that wasn't nearly as good as what Mom made at home, I heard the bell above the door ring and looked up to see my father standing there. He looked older than I remembered and tired, but he was there. He sat down across from me without saying anything for a long moment. Then he pulled something out of his jacket pocket, the framed photo I'd left in his garage. He'd been carrying it around, he said, looking at it whenever he felt angry or stubborn or hurt. It reminded him that our relationship was bigger than our disagreement, that we'd built something good together over the years that was worth fighting for. We talked for 3 hours that morning, really talked in a way we hadn't done since I was younger. He explained that his reaction to my job change wasn't really about the business or even about family loyalty. It was about fear that I was moving beyond him, into a world he didn't understand, and that eventually I'd realize I didn't need him anymore. He'd seen it happen with other families, where success created distance, and he'd rather push me away first than wait for me to drift away naturally. I helped him understand that success doesn't have to mean separation, that growing professionally didn't mean I was growing away from my family. We talked about ways I could still be involved in the family business, maybe helping them modernize their systems or expand their online presence. We also talked about the birthday situation, both of us acknowledging that we'd handled it poorly and let pride get in the way of love. By the time we left the coffee shop that day, we'd made plans for the following weekend. I was going to come over and help him with a project he'd been working on, and he was going to let me cook dinner for the family using some of those culinary skills I'd picked up during my travels for work. It wasn't a complete resolution. Everything takes time to heal, but it was a beginning. The following week, I did something that surprised both of us. I went back to all those stores and bought his birthday gifts again. The drill set, the baseball cap, the first edition book, everything I'd originally selected. But this time, I didn't wrap them or leave them as a surprise. Instead, I brought them over during one of our weekend visits and presented them casually, explaining what each item was and why I'd thought he'd like it. His reaction was completely different this time. He examined each gift carefully, asking questions about where I'd found things and how I'd known he wanted them. The first edition book especially impressed him. He spent an hour reading passages aloud and talking about why that particular author meant so much to him. It was the kind of conversation we used to have when I was younger, before life got complicated. But the best part wasn't his appreciation for the gifts themselves. It was the moment when he realized how much attention I'd been paying to his interests, how well I still knew him despite the distance that had grown between us. He said he'd forgotten that love shows up in the details, in remembering what matters to someone, and taking the time to act on that knowledge. Now, several months later, we found a new rhythm. I still work at TechFlow, and I love my job there. But I also spend every other weekend helping out at the construction company, and I've started developing a digital system that's already improved their efficiency by 20%. Dad has started asking me about my work, genuinely curious about the projects I'm involved in and the places I've traveled. The birthday incident has become something of a family legend, though we tell it differently now. Instead of a story about conflict and stubbornness, it's become a story about how love can survive pride, how misunderstandings can be worked through, and how sometimes the most meaningful gifts are the ones that take courage to give and wisdom to receive. Dad still keeps that framed photo on his workbench, and sometimes when I'm helping him with a project, I catch him glancing at it and smiling. We've learned that family relationships require the same kind of careful attention as any other important work: constant maintenance, honest communication, and the willingness to admit when you've made mistakes. The difference is that with family, the foundation is strong enough to support all that construction and reconstruction. The real test of our renewed relationship came about 6 months later, when Dad had his heart attack. I was in the middle of a client presentation in Seattle when Mom called, her voice shaking as she tried to explain that Dad had collapsed at the construction site and was being rushed to the hospital. The doctors weren't sure how serious it was, but they were running tests and needed the family there as soon as possible. I left the meeting immediately, not even stopping to grab my belongings from the hotel. During the 4-hour flight home, I kept thinking about our last conversation, how we'd argued about him working too many hours and not taking care of his health. He'd brushed off my concerns, saying that men in our family were built tough and that a little hard work never killed anyone. Now those words felt prophetic in the worst possible way. Kolimai azelaza. When I arrived at the hospital, the waiting room was full of our extended family. My siblings looked exhausted, Mom was pacing nervously, and everyone seemed to be speaking in hushed tones. The doctor explained that Dad had suffered a moderate heart attack, likely brought on by stress, poor diet, and years of physical labor. He was stable, but they needed to keep him for observation and were recommending significant lifestyle changes. I spent the next 3 days practically living at the hospital, taking turns with Mom and my siblings to sit with Dad when he was awake. During those long hours, we talked about things we'd never discussed before. He admitted that part of his anger about my career change had stemmed from his own regrets about never pursuing his dream of becoming an architect. He'd always been good at building things, creative in ways that surprised people, but family responsibilities and financial pressures had led him down a different path. He also confessed that watching me take risks and chase opportunities had made him proud and jealous at the same time. Proud because I was brave enough to go after what I wanted, jealous because he'd never given himself that same permission. The heart attack had forced him to confront his own mortality and realize that holding grudges was a waste of precious time. During his recovery period, I made the decision to take a leave of absence from TechFlow. My boss wasn't thrilled, but the company had always emphasized work-life balance, and they agreed to let me work remotely for a few months while helping manage the family business. Dad protested at first, saying he didn't want to be a burden or interfere with my career, but I explained that this wasn't about obligation, it was about choice. Running the construction company while Dad recovered gave me a new appreciation for what he'd built over the years. The business wasn't just about building structures. It was about relationships with long-term clients, many of whom had become genuine friends. I met homeowners whose kitchen renovations had turned into years-long friendships, small business owners who trusted Dad's crew with multiple projects, and elderly clients who relied on him for everything from major repairs to changing light bulbs. One particular client, Mrs. Rodriguez, had been working with Dad for over 15 years. She owned several rental properties and had Dad's crew handle all her maintenance and renovation work. When she heard about his heart attack, She stopped by the office with a casserole and stayed for 2 hours, sharing stories about how Dad had helped her through her own difficult times after her husband died. She talked about how he had always charged fair prices, never took advantage of her lack of construction knowledge, and had even helped her navigate insurance claims after a kitchen fire. These conversations helped me understand that Dad's business was about more than profit margins and project timelines. He'd built a reputation based on trust, quality work, and genuine care for his customers. But I also noticed areas where technology could help streamline operations without sacrificing that personal touch. The scheduling system was entirely paper-based, customer communications happened through phone calls and handwritten notes, and project documentation was scattered across filing cabinets and truck glove compartments. I started implementing small changes, always running them by Dad first, and explaining how each improvement would help rather than hinder the personal relationships he'd worked so hard to build. We created a digital customer database that made it easier to track project histories and preferences. I developed a simple app that allowed customers to see project timelines, communicate directly with the crew, and access photos of completed work for their records. The biggest innovation was a virtual consultation system I designed for initial project discussions. Instead of requiring customers to take time off work for preliminary meetings, they could walk through their spaces with a tablet, showing Dad exactly what they wanted done while he provided real-time feedback and estimates. Mrs. Rodriguez was our first test case, and she was amazed that she could get Dad's expert opinion on a bathroom renovation while he was still recovering at home. Word spread quickly about these new services, and we started getting inquiries from younger customers who appreciated the convenience of digital communication but still wanted the quality and reliability Dad's company was known for. Business actually increased during his recovery period, which surprised all of us and gave Dad a new sense of optimism about the company's future. But the most significant change wasn't technological, it was personal. Working closely with Dad's crew, I got to know the men and women who'd been loyal employees for years. There was Miguel, who'd started as a day laborer 20 years ago and was now Dad's most trusted project manager. Sarah, the only female electrician in the area, who'd fought prejudice and skepticism to become one of the most respected professionals in her field. And Tommy, Dad's nephew, who'd struggled with addiction but found stability and purpose working construction. Each of them had stories about how Dad had given them chances when others wouldn't, stood by them during personal crises, and treated them like family rather than just employees. Miguel told me about the time Dad had covered his wife's medical bills when their insurance fell through. Sarah described how Dad had defended her against sexist customers and made sure she got the same pay and respect as her male colleagues. Tommy credited Dad with saving his life by offering him work when he was fresh out of rehab and desperate for a second chance. These stories painted a picture of my father that I'd always known existed, but had never fully appreciated. Away from our family dynamics and personal conflicts, he was a man who used his business as a way to care for his community. The realization made me understand why my leaving had felt like such a betrayal to him. In his mind, I wasn't just walking away from a job. I was abandoning a mission to help people and build something meaningful. When Dad was finally cleared to return to light work, we had a serious conversation about the future of the business. I proposed a partnership arrangement where I would split my time between TechFlow and the construction company, using my technology background to help modernize operations while learning the traditional skills that were Dad's specialty. He was initially skeptical, worried that I'd eventually lose interest or that my corporate job would take priority. To prove my commitment, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I negotiated with TechFlow to shift to a consulting role, giving up my full-time position and steady salary in exchange for project-based work that would allow me more flexibility. It was a financial risk, but it felt like the right choice for this phase of my life. I wanted to honor both my professional skills and my family legacy, finding a way to bridge the gap between the world I'd chosen and the world I'd grown up in. The transition wasn't seamless. There were days when I missed the intellectual challenges of my corporate job, the travel opportunities, and the clear advancement path I'd given up. There were also days when Dad and I fell back into old patterns of disagreement, usually about the pace of change or the balance between tradition and innovation. But we'd learned to recognize these moments and address them before they escalated into serious conflicts. One particular challenge came when we bid on our biggest project ever, a complete renovation of the historic downtown library. The city council was looking for a contractor who could preserve the building's architectural integrity while updating it for modern accessibility and technology needs. It was exactly the kind of project that required both Dad's expertise in traditional construction methods and my understanding of contemporary systems integration. We spent weeks preparing the proposal, with Dad handling the construction timeline and materials sourcing while I developed plans for the technology infrastructure and accessibility improvements. The presentation to the City Council was a true collaboration, with both of us contributing our expertise to paint a complete picture of how we'd approach the project. When we won the bid, it felt like validation of our new partnership. But the real test came during the 6-month construction process. There were moments when Dad's traditional methods clashed with the modern requirements, and times when my technology solutions didn't account for the realities of working in a century-old building. We had to learn to trust each other's expertise completely, deferring to whoever had the most relevant knowledge for each specific challenge. The project also brought unexpected family healing. My siblings, who had initially been skeptical of my return to the family business, started volunteering their own skills to help with the library renovation. My sister Lisa, who worked in marketing, helped us document the project for social media and local press coverage. My brother Mark, a teacher, provided input on the educational technology installations. Even my youngest sister Emma, still in college, spent her summer break helping with painting and finishing work. For the first time in years, our family was working together toward a common goal. The library project became a symbol of what we could accomplish when we combined our different strengths instead of letting them divide us. Dad often commented that the building was being transformed by the same collaborative spirit that was transforming our family. The renovation was completed on schedule and within budget, earning recognition from the Historical Preservation Society and praise from the community. But more importantly for our family, it established a new model for how we could work together. Dad's traditional skills and my modern expertise weren't competing approaches. They were complementary tools that made us stronger when combined. As word spread about the library project, we started receiving inquiries about other jobs that required similar collaboration between old and new methods. A local brewery wanted to expand into a historic building while installing state-of-the-art brewing equipment. A family farm needed to build modern processing facilities that would blend seamlessly with their existing 19th-century barns. Each project pushed us to be more creative and collaborative. The success also changed how Dad viewed my original career decision. He began to see that my time at TechFlow hadn't been a rejection of family values. It had been preparation for bringing new capabilities to our family mission. The skills I'd developed in project management, systems thinking, and client relations were directly applicable to construction work, just in ways he hadn't initially recognized. Our relationship continued to evolve as we worked together more closely. Dad started asking my opinion on business decisions, and I started seeking his advice on client relations and project management. We developed a routine of having coffee together every morning before work, using that time to coordinate our schedules and discuss any challenges we were facing. These conversations often wandered beyond work topics. Dad shared stories about his own father, my grandfather, who had been a carpenter during the Depression. He talked about lessons he'd learned about resilience, integrity, and the dignity of honest work. I shared experiences from my corporate career, describing different management styles I'd observed and business strategies that might apply to our family company. We also talked about mistakes we'd both made. Dad acknowledged that he'd been too rigid in his expectations, too quick to see my career change as a personal rejection. I admitted that I'd been arrogant about my education and dismissive of the value of traditional business approaches. These conversations helped us understand each other better and build a stronger foundation for our working relationship. The birthday incident that had started our conflict became something we could laugh about, though it had taken time to reach that point. Dad kept the framed photo from that period on his desk at the office, and sometimes new employees would ask about it. He'd tell them the story as an example of how misunderstandings can escalate quickly, but also how they can be resolved with patience and genuine effort. 1 year after the heart attack, we decided to throw Dad a proper birthday celebration, one that included the whole family and acknowledged how much our relationships had grown and changed. Instead of the traditional party at home, we organized a gathering at the newly renovated library, inviting not just family, but also longtime clients, employees, and community members who had been part of Dad's professional journey. The evening was a celebration of more than just Dad's birthday. It was a recognition of what he'd built over the years and what we were building together for the future. Mrs. Rodriguez gave a speech about how Dad's work had touched her life. Miguel talked about the mentorship and opportunities Dad had provided. Sarah shared stories about Dad's support during challenging times in her career. When it was my turn to speak, I talked about the gifts I'd tried to give Dad 2 years earlier, and how returning them had seemed like the right response at the time. But I said that the real gifts between family members aren't things you can buy in stores. They're the time you spend together, the trust you build, and the willingness to see each other clearly and love what you find. I presented him with a new gift that night, a leather-bound photo album, documenting our work together over the past year. Every major project was represented, from the library renovation to smaller jobs that had taught us important lessons about collaboration. But mixed in with the construction photos were pictures of our morning coffee conversations, family dinners where we discussed business challenges, and moments of genuine laughter during difficult workdays. The final page of the album contained a letter I'd written, expressing gratitude for his patience during my period of stubbornness and pride. I acknowledged that his initial reaction to my career change had come from love and concern, even if it hadn't felt that way at the time. I also thanked him for being willing to change his mind, to see value in approaches that were different from his own, and to trust me with a role in the business he'd spent decades building. Dad's response was typical of him, practical and emotional at the same time. He said that watching me work over the past year had reminded him why he'd gotten into construction in the first place. The satisfaction of solving problems, building something lasting, and helping people improve their lives. He'd worried that I wouldn't find that same satisfaction in the family business. But seeing my enthusiasm for the projects and relationships had convinced him otherwise. He also admitted that having me as a partner had made him a better businessman. My fresh perspective had helped him see opportunities he might have missed, and solutions he wouldn't have considered. But more importantly, our collaboration had renewed his excitement about work in a way he hadn't expected at his age. The birthday celebration that night felt like a true new beginning for our family. Not because all our problems were solved, but because we'd learned how to handle problems together. We'd developed systems for communicating honestly, processes for making decisions collaboratively, and the trust necessary to navigate disagreements without letting them damage our core relationships. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Dad and I found ourselves alone in the library's main reading room, surrounded by the work we'd completed together. The space looked beautiful, with its restored original features complemented by subtle modern improvements. It felt like a physical representation of what we'd accomplished in our relationship, combining respect for tradition with openness to innovation. Dad picked up the photo album I'd given him and flipped through it slowly, pausing at images that captured particularly meaningful moments. He stopped at a picture taken during the library project, showing both of us covered in dust and paint, but grinning widely after solving a particularly challenging wiring problem. He said that photo captured everything he'd hoped for when he'd first imagined me joining the family business. A genuine partnership where we both contributed our strengths to achieve something neither of us could have accomplished alone. Looking back now, I realize that the birthday ban and gift return drama was probably necessary for us to reach this point. Sometimes relationships need to break down completely before they can be rebuilt on a stronger foundation. The conflict forced us to examine our assumptions, challenge our expectations, and ultimately choose love over pride. The construction business continues to grow, with new projects that blend traditional craftsmanship with innovative technology. We've hired additional employees, including a young architect who shares Dad's appreciation for both historical preservation and contemporary design. The company culture Dad established values of integrity, quality, and community care remains unchanged, but our methods and capabilities have expanded significantly. My role at TechFlow has evolved as well. The consulting work allows me to stay current with industry trends while applying those insights to our family business. Some of my corporate clients have become construction clients, and several construction clients have needed technology consulting services. The two parts of my professional life complement each other in ways I never anticipated. But perhaps the most significant change is in how our family handles conflict and communication. The birthday incident taught us that love isn't always enough. You also need understanding, patience, and the willingness to admit when you're wrong. We've developed family traditions around honest conversation, annual check-ins where we discuss how our relationships are working, and commitment to addressing problems before they escalate. Dad still keeps those original gift receipts in his wallet, not as a reminder of our conflict, but as a symbol of the journey we've taken together. Sometimes when we're working on a particularly challenging project, he'll pull them out and joke that if I ever want to quit the family business, he'll know exactly what to buy me as a going-away present. But we both know that conversation is purely hypothetical now. We've built something together that neither of us wants to abandon. The story of the banned birthday and returned gifts has become part of our family mythology, told at gatherings as an example of how stubbornness and pride can temporarily override love, but also how genuine effort and time can heal even the deepest misunderstandings. It's a reminder that family relationships require the same kind of careful attention and maintenance as any other important work, and that the investment is always worthwhile. The real transformation in our family became apparent during our second year working together, when my youngest sister Emma graduated college with a degree in interior design. Unlike my dramatic career crisis, Emma's transition into adulthood happened smoothly, but it brought new dynamics to our family business discussions. She'd grown up watching the construction company from the outside, seeing it as Dad's domain rather than a family legacy she might inherit. Emma had always been artistic, the one who arranged furniture and dollhouses with meticulous attention to detail, and who could envision how spaces could be transformed long before any work began. During family dinners, she'd often sketch renovation ideas on napkins while Dad described current projects. But she'd never expressed interest in joining the business, instead planning to work for established design firms in the city. Her perspective changed during the library renovation, when she'd helped with finishing work during summer break. Watching Dad and me collaborate on blending historical preservation with modern functionality sparked something in her creative mind. She started asking questions about how design decisions were made, why certain materials were chosen over others, and how customer preferences influenced final outcomes. After graduation, Emma surprised everyone by proposing that we add interior design services to the construction company. Her vision was to offer clients comprehensive renovation packages that included not just structural work, but complete aesthetic transformation. She'd researched similar businesses in other cities and found that the combination of construction and design services was increasingly popular with homeowners who wanted a single point of contact for major projects. Dad's initial reaction was cautious. He worried about expanding too quickly and taking on responsibilities outside his expertise. He'd always focused on the technical aspects of construction, leaving aesthetic decisions to clients or referring them to independent designers. But Emma's presentation was thorough and compelling, showing how design services could increase project values and customer satisfaction while creating natural opportunities for additional work. I found myself in an interesting position, having recently fought my own battle for professional independence while now advocating for Emma's integration into the family business. The irony wasn't lost on any of us, but it highlighted how much our family dynamics had evolved. Instead of assuming Emma's idea was impractical or threatening, Dad listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions about implementation. The discussion stretched over several weeks, with Emma developing detailed business plans and cost projections, while Dad and I evaluated how design services would affect our existing operations. We analyzed our client base to identify customers who might be interested in comprehensive renovation packages, researched licensing requirements for interior design services, and calculated the investment needed for design software and sample materials. Emma's proposal included starting small, offering design consultations for existing construction clients while building a portfolio and reputation. She'd work part-time initially, allowing her to take on freelance projects with other firms while establishing her role in our company. The arrangement would give her professional experience while letting us test the market for combined services without major financial risk. The first project that fully integrated construction and design services came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Chen, an elderly client who'd hired us for kitchen renovations in 2 of her rental properties. She'd been impressed with our work quality and technological improvements, but mentioned that coordinating with separate designers had been stressful and sometimes resulted in communication gaps between aesthetic and structural requirements. When Mrs. Chen inherited a third property that needed complete renovation, she asked if we could handle both construction and design. The house was a 1950s ranch that hadn't been updated since the 1980s, with dated fixtures, cramped layouts, and decorative choices that made the spaces feel smaller than they actually were. Emma saw enormous potential in the bones of the house, while Dad and I focused on structural improvements that would support her design vision. The collaboration required new levels of communication and coordination. Emma's design plans influenced our construction timeline, while structural realities sometimes necessitated changes to her aesthetic concepts. We learned to think in 3 dimensions, considering how electrical and plumbing modifications would affect furniture placement, how lighting choices would impact construction schedules, and how material selections would influence both budget and timeline. Emma's approach to design was methodical and client-focused, much like Dad's approach to construction. She spent hours with Mrs. Chen, understanding not just visual preferences but lifestyle needs, maintenance concerns, and long-term goals for the property. The resulting design plan balanced aesthetic appeal with practical considerations like durability, easy cleaning, and tenant-friendly features. The renovation took 4 months and became a showcase for our integrated services. Emma documented the process extensively, creating before and after portfolios that demonstrated the value of comprehensive renovation planning. The finished house looked completely transformed, with an open floor plan that maximized natural light, updated systems that improved energy efficiency, and design elements that made the space feel both modern and timeless. Mrs. Chen was thrilled with the results and immediately referred us to other property owners in her investment group. Word spread quickly through the local real estate community about our combined services, and we started receiving inquiries from homeowners who'd been hesitant to tackle major renovations because of the complexity of coordinating multiple contractors and designers. Emma's success in the family business created a different dynamic than my own integration had. Where my return had involved healing old wounds and rebuilding damaged relationships, Emma's inclusion felt like natural growth and expansion. She brought fresh energy and perspectives without the baggage of previous conflicts or disappointed expectations. Her presence also changed how Dad and I worked together. Having a third perspective in planning discussions often led to creative solutions we might not have considered. Emma's design training included understanding of building codes and structural requirements, so she could bridge the gap between aesthetic vision and construction reality in ways that benefited everyone involved. The success of our expanded services attracted attention from local media, with the regional newspaper running a feature story about our family business and its evolution across generations. The article described how we'd maintained traditional values of quality craftsmanship while adapting to contemporary market demands and customer expectations. During the interview, Dad reflected on how his understanding of family legacy had changed over the past few years. Originally, he'd imagined legacy as passing down exactly what he'd built, preserving traditional methods and established relationships without significant modification. But working with Emma and me had taught him that true legacy involved passing down values and principles that could adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining their essential character. The media coverage brought new business opportunities, including larger commercial projects that required the full range of our capabilities. A local restaurant owner wanted to expand into an adjacent historic building, preserving architectural details while creating a modern dining experience. A small manufacturing company needed to renovate their offices to attract younger employees while maintaining the practical functionality required for their operations. Each project taught us something new about collaboration and pushed us to develop better systems for integrating our different expertise areas. We created standardized processes for project planning that included input from construction, technology, and design perspectives, from the initial client consultation through final completion. These processes helped us avoid conflicts and miscommunications while ensuring that all aspects of each project were properly coordinated. The growth of our business also meant hiring additional employees, which introduced new challenges and opportunities. We needed people who could work effectively within our collaborative culture while bringing specialized skills that complemented our family team. The hiring process became an opportunity to articulate our values and expectations while learning from candidates who brought different backgrounds and perspectives. One hire who significantly impacted our company culture was Janet, a project manager with extensive experience in commercial construction, but a background in nonprofit work. She brought systematic approaches to project coordination, along with strong communication skills and a genuine commitment to customer service. Janet's ability to translate between technical construction language and client-friendly explanations helped us serve customers more effectively. Another key addition was Carlos, a young carpenter who'd recently completed a traditional apprenticeship program, but also had training in sustainable building practices and renewable energy systems. His knowledge of green building techniques opened new market opportunities while aligning with Emma's interest in environmentally conscious design choices. As our team expanded, maintaining the family business culture became both more important and more challenging. We developed regular team meetings that included not just project coordination but also discussions of company values, customer service standards, and professional development goals. These meetings helped ensure that new employees understood our commitment to quality work, honest communication, and community engagement. The evolution of our business also required changes in our family relationships and communication patterns. With 3 family members now working together daily, we needed clear boundaries between professional and personal interactions. We established rules about not discussing work problems during family dinners and designated specific times for business planning conversations. We also learned to recognize and address the unique challenges that arise when family members work together. Disagreements about business decisions could easily become personal conflicts if not handled carefully. We developed protocols for handling disputes professionally, including bringing in outside perspectives when family dynamics interfered with objective decision-making. One such situation arose when Emma and I disagreed about pricing strategy for design services. She wanted to position our offerings as premium services with higher profit margins, while I favored competitive pricing that would help us gain market share quickly. Our discussion became heated when personal history entered the conversation, with Emma suggesting that I was being overly cautious because of my previous conflicts with Dad. Dad's response to this conflict demonstrated how much he'd grown as a leader and mediator. Instead of taking sides or trying to impose a solution, he suggested that we each research our positions more thoroughly and present our findings to the whole team, including our non-family employees. This approach forced us to move beyond personal dynamics and focus on objective business considerations. The team discussion revealed that both approaches had merit, leading to a compromise strategy that involved premium pricing for comprehensive renovation packages while offering competitive rates for design consultation services. More importantly, the process taught Emma and me how to handle professional disagreements without letting them damage our personal relationship. These experiences in conflict resolution and collaborative decision-making strengthened our family bonds while improving our business operations. We learned that working together successfully required constant attention to communication, mutual respect for different perspectives, and willingness to prioritize long-term relationships over short-term advantages. The 3rd year of our expanded operations brought our biggest challenge and opportunity yet when the city announced plans to revitalize the downtown district. The project involved renovating several historic buildings for mixed-use development, combining retail spaces, apartments, and office facilities while preserving architectural character and improving accessibility. The scale of the project was beyond anything we'd attempted, requiring coordination with multiple stakeholders, compliance with complex regulations, and integration of diverse building systems. But the opportunity aligned perfectly with our combined capabilities in construction, technology, and design, making us ideal candidates for several components of the overall development. Preparing our proposal required months of collaboration, with each family member contributing specialized knowledge while learning from the others. Dad's experience with historic preservation guided our approach to structural modifications. Emma's design skills helped us envision how spaces could be adapted for contemporary uses while respecting original architectural elements. My technology background enabled us to propose innovative systems for energy management, security, and communications. The proposal process also forced us to articulate our company's evolution and future vision more clearly than ever before. We weren't just a construction company that had added technology and design services. We'd become an integrated firm capable of managing complex projects that required diverse expertise and careful coordination. When we won the bid for 2 buildings in the downtown project, it represented validation of our collaborative approach and growth as a family business. But it also meant taking on responsibilities and risks, that tested our capabilities and relationships in new ways. The project timeline was aggressive, the budget constraints were tight, and the public visibility meant that any problems would affect our reputation throughout the community. The first few months of the downtown project pushed everyone to their limits. Dad was managing construction crews on both buildings, while ensuring compliance with historical preservation requirements. Emma was coordinating with city planners, architects, and future tenants to finalize design specifications that met everyone's needs. I was installing complex building systems while troubleshooting integration problems and managing project communications. The stress of the project revealed both strengths and weaknesses in our family dynamics. We were excellent at solving technical problems collaboratively, but we struggled with time management and priority setting when multiple crises demanded attention simultaneously. We learned to rely more heavily on our non-family employees and to delegate responsibilities that didn't require family member involvement. Janet's project management skills proved invaluable during this period, as she helped coordinate activities across both buildings while maintaining communication with various stakeholders. Carlos's craftsmanship and problem-solving abilities allowed him to handle complex restoration work independently, freeing Dad to focus on overall project supervision and quality control. The downtown project also strengthened our relationships with other local businesses and organizations. We worked closely with the Historical Society to ensure our renovations met preservation standards. We coordinated with utility companies to upgrade infrastructure without disrupting existing services. We collaborated with local artisans to restore decorative elements and with modern contractors to install contemporary systems. These partnerships expanded our network and reputation while teaching us valuable lessons about large-scale project management. We learned that successful complex projects require not just technical expertise, but also strong relationships, clear communication, and flexible problem-solving approaches. 6 months into the downtown project, we reached a milestone that felt particularly meaningful to our family when the first building was completed ahead of schedule and within budget. The structure housed retail spaces on the ground floor and apartments on the upper levels, all designed to blend historical character with modern convenience and efficiency. The completion celebration was attended by city officials, future tenants, and community members who had followed the project's progress. Dad gave a speech acknowledging the collaborative effort required for such an undertaking, thanking not just our family team, but also the many contractors, consultants, and community members who had contributed to the success. Emma presented a slideshow documenting the transformation process, showing how careful planning and execution had preserved the building's historic charm while creating spaces suitable for contemporary use. The before and after images demonstrated the value of integrated construction and design services, validating our decision to expand beyond traditional construction work. My contribution to the celebration was a demonstration of the building's smart systems, showing how technology integration had improved energy efficiency, security, and tenant convenience without compromising aesthetic integrity. The systems I'd designed allowed centralized monitoring and control, while giving individual tenants autonomy over their own spaces. But the most meaningful moment of the celebration came when Mrs. Rodriguez, our longtime client, approached Dad with tears in her eyes. She told him that watching our family work together on such an ambitious project had inspired her own family to consider collaborative approaches to their business challenges. She said our example proved that families could grow and change while maintaining their essential bonds and values. That conversation reminded us that our business success was about more than financial achievement or professional recognition. We'd become an example in our community of how families could navigate change, resolve conflicts, and support each other's growth while building something meaningful together. The second downtown building presented different challenges, requiring more extensive structural modifications and more complex design solutions. The space was being converted from a former department store into a community center, with meeting rooms, event spaces, and offices for local nonprofit organizations. The project required careful attention to accessibility, acoustic design, and flexible space usage. Emma's role expanded significantly during this phase, as she worked with various community groups to understand their specific needs and preferences. Each organization had different requirements for their spaces, and coordinating these diverse needs while maintaining design coherence required sophisticated planning and communication skills. The community center project also involved more extensive collaboration with local artisans and craftspeople, as many design elements were being custom created to reflect the building's history and the community's character. Emma worked with a local metalworker to create custom fixtures, coordinated with a muralist to design artwork that complemented the architectural features, and collaborated with a furniture maker to design pieces that met both aesthetic and functional requirements. Dad's expertise proved crucial for managing the structural modifications required to create large, open spaces suitable for community gatherings. The original building had been designed for retail use, with numerous support columns and relatively low ceilings. Converting it for community use required careful engineering to maintain structural integrity while creating the flexible, welcoming spaces the organizations needed. My technology integration work for the community center focused on systems that would support diverse activities while remaining user-friendly for organizations with limited technical expertise. The building needed audiovisual capabilities for presentations and performances, security systems that allowed different access levels for various users, and communication systems that could support everything from small meetings to large community events. The complexity of balancing these diverse requirements while staying within budget and timeline constraints tested our collaborative skills in new ways. We had to make numerous compromises and creative solutions, always keeping in mind that the building would serve community needs for decades to come. One particularly challenging situation arose when structural modifications revealed unexpected problems with the building's foundation that required additional work and expense. The discovery threatened both our timeline and budget, potentially affecting our relationships with the community organizations depending on the space. Our response to this crisis demonstrated how much our family teamwork had evolved. Instead of assigning blame or making unilateral decisions, we immediately called a family meeting to assess the situation and develop options. We involved our key employees in the discussion and consulted with structural engineers and city officials to understand our alternatives. The solution we developed required each family member to contribute differently to managing the additional costs and timeline delays. Dad negotiated with subcontractors to defer some payments and find cost savings in other areas. Emma worked with the community organizations to adjust timelines and temporary arrangements. I identified technology systems that could be installed later to reduce immediate expenses without compromising long-term functionality. Most importantly, we maintained transparent communication with all stakeholders throughout the process, explaining the problems we discovered and the steps we were taking to address them. This honest approach strengthened, rather than damaged, our relationships with the community organizations, who appreciated our commitment to finding solutions rather than simply passing problems on to them. The experience reinforced lessons we'd learned about the importance of contingency planning, clear communication, and collaborative problem-solving. It also demonstrated that our family business had developed the resilience and flexibility needed to handle unexpected challenges while maintaining our commitments to quality and integrity. When the community center finally opened, 8 months after the original completion date, but with all issues properly resolved, the celebration felt especially meaningful. The building housed a senior center, a youth organization, a small theater group, and offices for several local nonprofits, creating a hub of community activity in the heart of the downtown district. Dad's speech at the opening ceremony reflected on how the project had challenged and strengthened our family business while serving important community needs. He talked about the satisfaction of creating spaces where people could gather, learn, and work together toward common goals, connecting our construction work to larger purposes and values. Emma presented a time-lapse video showing the building's transformation from empty retail space to vibrant community center, highlighting the collaborative effort between our family, local artisans, and community organizations. The video became popular on social media and attracted attention from other communities considering similar renovation projects. My presentation focused on the building's technology systems and their role in supporting diverse community activities. I demonstrated how the integrated audiovisual and communication systems could be easily reconfigured for different events, showing community members how to use the equipment effectively while maintaining professional quality results. The community center opening marked a turning point for our family business, establishing our reputation for complex projects that required integration of construction, design, and technology expertise. More importantly, it demonstrated our commitment to community service and our ability to work collaboratively with diverse stakeholders to achieve shared goals. The success of the downtown project opened doors we never expected, but it also brought challenges that tested our family business in entirely new ways. Within months of completing the community center, we received inquiries from developers in neighboring cities who had heard about our integrated approach to historic renovation. The opportunities were exciting, but they also forced us to confront questions about growth, expansion, and maintaining our family-centered culture. The first major out-of-town opportunity came from a developer in Millbrook, a city about 2 hours away, that was planning to revitalize their own downtown district. They'd seen the media coverage of our work and were impressed by our ability to combine historical preservation with modern functionality. The project they described was even larger than what we'd tackled locally, involving an entire city block of connected buildings that would be transformed into a mixed-use complex. The financial potential was enormous, easily double what we'd earned from our hometown projects. But taking on work in another city would require establishing temporary operations there, coordinating with unfamiliar local contractors and suppliers, and managing projects we couldn't visit daily. It would also mean spending significant time away from our established customer base and community relationships. Dad's initial reaction was skeptical. He'd built his reputation on personal relationships and hands-on involvement in every project. The idea of managing work he couldn't oversee directly made him uncomfortable, and he worried about maintaining quality standards when working with unfamiliar teams. He also questioned whether expanding too quickly might compromise the family focus that had become central to our business identity. Emma was more enthusiastic about the expansion opportunity, seeing it as a chance to build her design portfolio with larger, more visible projects. She'd been researching interior design firms that worked regionally and nationally, studying how they maintained consistent quality while operating in multiple markets. Her research suggested that expansion was possible with proper systems and careful planning. I found myself torn between the two perspectives. The technology consultant side of my background recognized the business potential and understood how systems and processes could support expansion. But my experience with family dynamics made me cautious about changes that might strain our relationships or dilute the collaborative culture we'd worked hard to build. We spent several weeks discussing the Millbrook opportunity, eventually deciding to visit the city and meet with the developers before making any commitments. The trip became a family expedition, with all three of us spending 2 days touring the proposed project site, meeting with local officials, and assessing the scope of work involved. The buildings were magnificent 19th-century structures that had been vacant for years, their architectural details intact but their systems completely outdated. The project would require everything we'd learned about historical preservation, modern technology integration, and contemporary design sensibilities. Walking through the empty spaces, we could envision the transformation potential, but we could also see the enormous complexity involved. Our meetings with the Millbrook development team revealed both opportunities and concerns. They were genuinely impressed with our work and seemed committed to quality results rather than just cost minimization. But they also had aggressive timelines and budget expectations that would challenge even our most efficient operations. The decision about whether to take on the Millbrook project became a defining moment for our family business. We realized that we weren't just choosing whether to accept a particular job. We were deciding what kind of company we wanted to become and how growth would affect our relationships and values. After extensive discussion, we developed a compromise approach. We would take on the Millbrook project, but as a pilot test for expansion, rather than a commitment to regional operations. We'd establish clear criteria for success that included not just financial performance, but also quality standards, family satisfaction, and impact on our local operations. The arrangement we negotiated with the Millbrook developers reflected our cautious approach. We would handle the most complex building in their project, demonstrating our capabilities while limiting our risk exposure. If the collaboration was successful for both parties, we'd consider taking on additional buildings in future phases. Preparing for the Millbrook project required significant changes in our operations and family dynamics. We needed to develop systems for remote project management, establish relationships with local suppliers and subcontractors, and create communication protocols that would keep everyone informed despite the distance involved. Dad decided to spend 3 days each week in Millbrook during active construction phases, returning home for long weekends to maintain involvement in local projects and family life. This arrangement was difficult for him initially, as he'd never spent extended time away from home for work purposes. Emma's role expanded to include more client communication and project coordination, as she would often serve as the primary point of contact when Dad was traveling. This responsibility pushed her to develop new skills in project management and client relations while continuing her design work. My technology background proved valuable for developing remote monitoring and communication systems that allowed us to maintain oversight of the Millbrook project from our home base. I installed cameras and sensors that provided real-time information about construction progress, along with video conferencing systems that enabled daily coordination meetings regardless of location. The Millbrook project began in early spring, with foundation and structural work that required Dad's direct supervision. The first few weeks were challenging, as we learned to coordinate activities across 2 cities while maintaining quality standards and communication effectiveness. Local contractors in Millbrook were initially skeptical of our family-based approach and our emphasis on collaborative decision-making. They were accustomed to more traditional hierarchical management styles and found our inclusive planning meetings unusual. However, as they saw the results of our methods improved coordination, fewer mistakes, and higher quality outcomes, they became enthusiastic supporters of our approach. One particularly memorable moment came when a structural problem was discovered that required immediate attention and creative problem-solving. Instead of making unilateral decisions or waiting for Dad to travel back to Millbrook, we organized a video conference that included Dad from the road, Emma and me from our home office, and key local contractors from the project site. The virtual collaboration session lasted 3 hours and resulted in an innovative solution that satisfied structural requirements while preserving architectural details and staying within budget constraints. The local contractors were amazed by our ability to coordinate expertise from multiple locations and develop solutions collectively, rather than through traditional top-down decision-making. Word of our collaborative methods spread through Millbrook's construction community, leading to inquiries from other contractors who wanted to understand our approaches better. Some expressed interest in applying similar methods to their own projects, while others requested to partner with us on future work. These conversations led to an unexpected opportunity when a local Millbrook contractor approached us about forming a formal partnership for regional projects. His company had excellent local relationships and established operations, while we brought specialized expertise in historic renovation and integrated services. A partnership would allow us to take on larger projects while leveraging local knowledge and reducing our need to maintain remote operations. The partnership discussion required careful consideration of how to maintain our family business culture while working with external organizations. We spent several months developing agreements that preserved our decision-making autonomy and quality standards, while creating opportunities for mutual benefit and growth. The partnership with Millbrook Construction Services became our template for selective expansion, allowing us to take on challenging projects in new markets without compromising our family-centered approach or local commitments. Over the following year, we completed 3 major projects through this partnership model, each one teaching us valuable lessons about collaboration and growth management. Meanwhile, our local operations continued to evolve and expand. The success of our downtown projects had established our reputation for complex renovations, leading to inquiries from property owners throughout the region. We found ourselves managing a waiting list of potential clients while trying to maintain reasonable timelines for project completion. The growth in demand forced us to hire additional employees and develop more sophisticated project management systems. Janet's role expanded to include training new hires and developing standardized procedures that would maintain quality consistency as our team grew. Carlos became a crew leader, training younger workers in both traditional craftsmanship and modern building techniques. Emma's design services were particularly popular, with clients specifically requesting our company because of her ability to integrate aesthetic vision with construction reality. She developed a reputation for creative solutions that maximized space usage while respecting architectural character, making her especially sought after for challenging renovation projects. My technology consulting work had also grown beyond our family business, with several regional companies requesting help with system integration and process improvement. The consulting income provided financial stability that allowed us to be more selective about construction projects while continuing to invest in equipment and training. The balance between family business and individual professional growth required ongoing attention and communication. We established monthly family meetings specifically focused on business planning, separate from our project coordination discussions. These meetings allowed us to address strategic questions about growth, expansion, and individual career development within the context of our shared enterprise. One significant challenge arose when Emma received an offer to join a prestigious design firm in the state capital, with opportunities for high-profile commercial projects and significantly higher income than our family business could provide. The offer forced us to confront questions about individual ambition versus family commitment that echoed the conflicts Dad and I had experienced years earlier. Emma's consideration of the outside offer led to intensive family discussions about career paths, financial goals, and the future direction of our business. Unlike my earlier conflicts with Dad, these conversations were characterized by mutual respect and genuine concern for Emma's professional development and personal satisfaction. Dad's response to Emma's job offer demonstrated how much his perspective on family and career had evolved. Instead of seeing the outside opportunity as a threat or betrayal, he encouraged Emma to evaluate it carefully and make the decision that would best serve her long-term goals. He also committed to supporting whatever choice she made, whether that meant staying with the family business or pursuing other opportunities. Emma ultimately decided to decline the outside offer, but only after we'd restructured her role in our company to provide greater creative autonomy and professional development opportunities. We formalized her position as head of design services, with authority to hire additional designers and expand our aesthetic capabilities. The restructuring also included financial arrangements that better reflected Emma's contributions to company growth and success. Instead of treating design services as an add-on to construction work, we recognize them as a core business component with independent value and growth potential. These changes in Emma's role and responsibilities had positive effects throughout our organization. Other employees saw that individual growth and recognition were possible within our family business structure, leading to increased engagement and innovation. Several crew members requested additional training opportunities, and some expressed interest in developing specialized expertise areas. The evolution of our business structure also attracted attention from business schools and family enterprise organizations who were interested in our approach to integrating multiple generations and skill sets within a traditional industry. We were invited to speak at conferences and participate in case studies about family business development and succession planning. These speaking opportunities provided valuable networking and learning experiences, while raising our profile within the construction and design industries. We met other family businesses facing similar challenges and opportunities, learning from their experiences, while sharing our own insights about collaboration and growth management. One particularly valuable connection came through a family business conference, where we met the Kowalski family, who operated a regional architectural firm specializing in sustainable design. Their expertise in green building practices complemented our capabilities in historic renovation and technology integration, leading to discussions about potential collaboration. The partnership with Kowalski Architecture began with a single project, a renovation of an early 20th century school building that was being converted into affordable housing. The project required balancing historical preservation requirements with modern energy efficiency standards and accessibility needs, exactly the type of complex challenge that benefited from multiple areas of expertise. Working with the Kowalskis taught us new approaches to sustainable building practices while providing them with insights into technology integration and family business management. The collaboration was so successful that we formalized an ongoing partnership for projects requiring both architectural design and construction services. The school renovation project also introduced us to the affordable housing development community, opening opportunities to work on socially impactful projects that aligned with our family values of community service and quality craftsmanship. These projects often involved complex financing arrangements and regulatory requirements, but they provided meaningful work that made a real difference in people's lives. One affordable housing project that particularly impacted our family involved renovating a former factory building into apartments for seniors and disabled individuals. The project required extensive accessibility modifications and creative design solutions to provide comfortable living spaces within the constraints of industrial architecture. Emma's design work for this project focused on creating spaces that felt homelike and dignified, while meeting strict accessibility requirements and budget constraints. She developed innovative storage solutions, lighting designs, and space layouts that maximized functionality while maintaining aesthetic appeal. Dad's construction expertise was crucial for adapting the industrial structure to residential use, requiring modifications to mechanical systems, installation of sound insulation, and creation of safe, accessible common areas. The work was technically challenging but deeply satisfying, as we could see how our efforts would directly improve quality of life for the building's future residents. My technology contributions included designing systems for emergency communication, energy management, and building maintenance that would keep operating costs low while providing residents with modern conveniences and safety features. The systems needed to be reliable and user-friendly, as many residents would have limited technical experience. The affordable housing project took 8 months to complete and received recognition from both housing advocacy organizations and construction industry groups. More importantly for our family, it demonstrated that our business success could be leveraged for community benefit and social impact, connecting our work to larger purposes beyond profit and professional achievement. The recognition from the affordable housing project led to additional opportunities to work on community-focused developments, including a project to create transitional housing for veterans and another to renovate a community health center in an underserved neighborhood. These projects often operated on tighter budgets and timelines than commercial work, but they provided enormous personal satisfaction and strengthened our reputation for quality work and community commitment. By our 4th year of expanded operations, our family business had evolved far beyond Dad's original construction company while maintaining the values and relationships that had always been central to our identity. We employed 12 people full-time and worked regularly with a network of specialized contractors and consultants throughout the region. Emma had established design services as a significant revenue source and professional specialty, with her own client relationships and project portfolio. Her work was featured in regional design publications and had attracted interest from clients in other states, who were drawn to her ability to blend historical character with contemporary functionality. My role had expanded to include business development and strategic planning, along with technology consulting and project management. The systems I developed for project coordination and client communication had become models that other construction companies requested to license and implement. Dad remained the heart of our operations, providing leadership, quality oversight, and the relationships that connected our work to community needs and values. His role had evolved from hands-on construction management to strategic leadership and mentorship, though he continued to be directly involved in the most complex and challenging aspects of our projects. The success of our family business had also strengthened our personal relationships, providing shared purpose and mutual respect that enhanced our connections beyond work. We'd learned to separate business disagreements from family conflicts, to support each other's individual growth while maintaining collective goals, and to balance tradition with innovation in ways that honored the past while embracing the future. Looking back on the journey from the birthday conflict that had driven us apart to the collaborative enterprise we'd built together, the transformation seemed almost miraculous. But we understood that the changes hadn't happened automatically. They'd required conscious effort, honest communication, and willingness to admit mistakes and learn from them. The photo Dad still kept on his desk from our reconciliation period had been joined by others documenting major milestones in our business development and family growth. The collection told the story of our evolution from conflict to collaboration, from individual ambitions to shared purpose, from a traditional construction company to an integrated family enterprise serving community needs while achieving professional success. The birthday incident that had started our journey of growth and reconciliation was now remembered as a turning point rather than a crisis. A moment when pride and stubbornness had temporarily overcome love and understanding, but also when the foundations were laid for stronger relationships and better communication. The returned gifts had taught us about consequences and forgiveness, about the difference between gestures and genuine connection, and about the importance of choosing love over pride when family relationships are at stake. The real measure of how far we'd come as a family became clear 5 years after that painful birthday when Dad banned me from his celebration. This year marked not only Dad's 70th birthday but also the 5th anniversary of our family business partnership, and Mom insisted on throwing a celebration that would honor both milestones. The party was held at the community center we'd renovated, in the main hall where Emma's design work had created a space that perfectly balanced historical charm with modern functionality. As guests arrived, I watched Dad greeting longtime clients, employees, and community members who had become part of our extended family over the years. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, now in her 80s but still sharp and engaged, telling anyone who would listen about how our family had helped her through difficult times and business challenges. Miguel had brought his grandchildren, proudly showing them the renovation work their grandfather had supervised. Sarah, our electrician partner, arrived with her teenage daughter, who was considering following her mother into the construction trades. The Kowalskis from our architectural partnership had driven down for the celebration, along with representatives from several community organizations whose spaces we'd helped create. Even some of the contractors from Millbrook had made the trip, bringing photos of projects we'd completed together and stories about lessons they'd learned from our collaborative approach. Emma had organized a slideshow presentation that chronicled not just our business growth, but the evolution of our family relationships. The images began with old photos of Dad's original construction company, progressed through pictures of my corporate career and Emma's college years, and then documented our reconciliation and partnership development. One photo that drew particular attention showed Dad and me working side by side during the library renovation, both of us concentrating intensely on a wiring problem, while Emma consulted architectural drawings in the background. A guest commented that you could see the family resemblance not just in our faces, but in our approach to problem solving, the way we leaned in with the same focused determination. When it came time for speeches, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this celebration. 5 years earlier, I'd stood outside this same building looking through windows at a family gathering I'd been excluded from, feeling angry and rejected and convinced that my father didn't want me in his life. Tonight, I was surrounded by evidence of what we'd built together, not just the physical spaces we'd renovated, but the relationships we'd strengthened, the community connections we'd fostered, and the business legacy we were creating for future generations. The transformation seemed miraculous, but I knew it had required daily choices to prioritize love over pride, understanding over stubbornness, and collaboration over individual ambition. Dad's speech that evening was characteristically practical and emotional. He talked about the satisfaction of building things that would last, not just structures but relationships and traditions that could survive change and growth. He acknowledged that his initial reaction to my career decisions had been rooted in fear and misunderstanding, but that working together had taught him that family legacy wasn't about preserving everything exactly as it was. It was about passing down values that could adapt and thrive in new circumstances. He also spoke about Emma's contributions, praising her creative vision and collaborative spirit, while noting that her success had come through her own talent and hard work, rather than family connections. He expressed pride in how she'd established herself as a respected professional while maintaining strong family bonds. When Dad finished his remarks, he pulled out something that made several guests chuckle: the original gift receipts from 5 years earlier, now laminated and showing signs of wear from being carried in his wallet. He explained that he'd kept them not as a reminder of our conflict but as a symbol of how relationships could be repaired when people were willing to admit mistakes and work toward understanding. He announced that he was finally ready to let go of those receipts, but only after using them one more time. He'd tracked down the exact same gifts I'd originally bought him: the power drill set, the vintage baseball cap, the first edition Western novel, and purchased them again. This time, he said, he was ready to accept them not as gestures of reconciliation, but as expressions of love between family members who truly knew and appreciated each other. The moment was both moving and amusing, as Dad opened each gift with exaggerated care and delight, while the audience laughed and applauded. But beneath the humor was a deeper recognition of how far we'd all traveled from that painful period of misunderstanding and hurt feelings. Emma's contribution to the celebration was a special gift she'd commissioned from local artisans: a custom photo album bound in leather from Dad's old work boots, and decorated with metalwork created from salvaged materials from our various renovation projects. Inside were pictures documenting not just our business milestones but personal moments of growth, learning, and collaboration. The final page of the album contained a letter we'd all written together, expressing gratitude for the lessons we'd learned about family, forgiveness, and the importance of choosing love over pride. We acknowledged that our journey hadn't always been smooth, that we'd made mistakes and hurt each other's feelings, but that we'd also learned to work through difficulties while maintaining respect and affection. My gift to Dad was simpler, but perhaps more meaningful: a framed copy of the first contract we'd signed together as business partners, along with financial statements showing how our collaboration had benefited not just our family, but our employees, clients, and community. The numbers told a story of growth and success, but more importantly, they represented the tangible results of choosing cooperation over conflict. Dad held the frame for a long moment, studying the contract we'd both signed with such hope and uncertainty years earlier. Then he looked up at Emma and me, his eyes bright with emotion, and said something that captured the essence of our entire journey. "You know, I spent so much time worrying about what I was passing down to you that I forgot to appreciate what you were bringing to me." He set the frame on the table next to the photo album Emma had made, and the restored gifts he'd opened earlier. Together, they told the complete story of our transformation from a family divided by pride and misunderstanding to one united by purpose and genuine respect for each other's contributions. As we walked out of the community center that night, I couldn't help but think about the man who had stood outside the same building 5 years ago, angry and hurt, and convinced his father had rejected him completely. That version of myself could never have imagined this moment: the successful business partnership, the healed relationships, the deep satisfaction of building something meaningful together. The birthday that had once represented everything broken between us had become a celebration of everything we'd repaired and created. The gifts that had been returned in anger had been replaced by something far more valuable: the gift of second chances, mutual understanding, and a family legacy built on love rather than obligation. Sometimes the best gifts aren't the ones you can buy in stores or wrap in pretty paper. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones that take years to give and a lifetime to appreciate: the gift of forgiveness, the gift of patience, and, most importantly, the gift of choosing family over pride, cooperation over conflict, and love over everything else that might try to drive you apart. That night, as Dad carefully carried his framed contract to his truck, I knew our story had finally come full circle. The man who had once banned me from his birthday was now my business partner, my mentor, and most importantly, my father, in the truest sense of the word. And that was worth more than all the returned gifts in the world. Bata ilamoin, bata haif, the end.